The encrypted phone buzzed at exactly 0342 hours, pulling Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell from a dreamless sleep in her quarters at Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado. 6 years as a SEAL had taught her to wake instantly, fully alert, already calculating threat assessments before her feet hit the cold floor. But this wasn't a deployment call. The message was simpler, more ominous. Report to NCIS Headquarters San Diego. 0800 hours. Classification, eyes only. Authorization, Deputy Director Walsh. Sarah stared at the screen in the darkness of her room, her pulse steady at 58 beats per minute. NCIS didn't summon SEAL operators at 3 in the morning unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. She'd completed her last combat deployment 8 months ago, Iraq, a counterterrorism operation that had resulted in 3 high-value targets eliminated and 0 American casualties. Everything had been by the book, sanitized, approved through proper channels. So why was Naval Criminal Investigative Service calling her in? She dressed in her service khakis, the uniform crisp and regulation perfect, ribbons on her chest telling a story most people couldn't read, Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Valor Device, Combat Action Ribbon, Iraq Campaign Medal, the Golden Trident that marked her as one of fewer than 50 women who'd ever earned the SEAL qualification. 28 years old, and she'd already operated in 7 countries, conducted 42 classified missions, and been shot twice. The scars were hidden under her uniform, but they were there, permanent reminders that freedom had a price and someone had to pay it. The drive to NCIS headquarters took 37 minutes through pre-dawn San Diego traffic. Sarah counted seconds like breathing, a habit from tactical operations where timing meant the difference between mission success and body bags. The facility was a nondescript, concrete building near the waterfront, deliberately unremarkable, the kind of place that processed intelligence and conducted investigations while the rest of the city slept. Security cleared her through 3 checkpoints, each more thorough than the last. Retinal scan, fingerprints, background verification against classified personnel databases. By the time she reached the 4th floor conference room, it was 0756 hours. Sarah arrived early for everything. Punctuality was respect, and tardiness was tactical disadvantage. The conference room was empty except for one man. He stood at the window overlooking the harbor, his back to the door, hands clasped behind him, in a posture Sarah recognized immediately. Military bearing never really faded, even decades after retirement. The man was tall, maybe 6'2", with steel gray hair cut in a style that suggested he'd worn a uniform for most of his life. His civilian clothes, dark slacks and a button-down shirt, couldn't hide the physique of someone who still maintained combat readiness despite being well past 60. Lieutenant Mitchell. The man didn't turn around. His voice was gravelly, worn smooth by years of command. "You're 2 minutes early. That's good. Punctuality suggests discipline. Discipline suggests you might survive what I'm about to ask you to do." He turned, and Sarah found herself face to face with Colonel James Martinez, retired SEAL Team 6, living legend in special operations communities, the man who'd written half the tactical doctrine Sarah had studied at basic underwater demolition training. She'd never met him personally, but every SEAL knew his reputation. 3 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, 27 years of service, including operations so classified that most of them still didn't officially exist. "Sir," Sarah came to attention automatically, respect overriding the fact that he was technically a civilian now. "At ease, Lieutenant." Martinez gestured to the conference table. "Sit down. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. If you decline the mission I'm offering, you walk out that door and we never speak of this conversation again. Understood?" "Understood, sir." They sat across from each other, and Martinez pulled out a tablet, entered a 12-digit passcode, then slid it across the table. The screen displayed a map of Nevada, zoomed in on Naval Air Station Fallon, a training facility about 60 miles east of Reno. Red dots clustered around one building on the base, each dot representing a data point in whatever investigation had brought Sarah here. NAS Fallon. Martinez's voice was clinical, emotionless, the tone of someone briefing an operation. Population approximately 700 active duty personnel, mix of Navy, Marines, Air Force. Primary mission is fighter weapons training, including Top Gun programs. Clean facility, good leadership, stellar reputation, or so everyone thought until 3 years ago. He swiped the screen. 17 photographs appeared, all women, all in uniform, ranging in age from 19 to 34. Corporal Lisa Martinez, Marine Corps, assaulted September 2021. Petty Officer Jessica Torres, Navy, assaulted November 2021. Private First Class Rebecca Cooper, Marine Corps, assaulted January 2022. Martinez continued through all 17 names, each one a woman who'd served her country and been betrayed by the very system meant to protect her. 17 formal complaints filed with NCIS over 3 years. Every single complaint involved the same pattern: mandatory social events at the base recreation building, forced alcohol consumption, escalating harassment, physical assault, sexual assault. And in every single case, the complaints were dismissed as unsubstantiated due to insufficient evidence. Sarah studied the photographs, memorizing faces. How is that possible? 17 victims, same pattern, same location, and nobody saw a connection? Oh, someone saw the connection. Martinez's expression darkened. Commander Patricia Hayes, the executive officer at Fallon, personally reviewed 14 of those complaints. She marked every one as unsubstantiated and transferred the victims to different duty stations within 3 weeks of their reports. The other 3 complaints never made it past unit-level investigation. Victims were pressured to withdraw them. That's not negligence, that's conspiracy. Correct. Martinez pulled up another file. And it gets worse. We've identified 6 primary suspects, all male, all enlisted or junior officers, all with spotless service records that are too perfect to be real. The leader is Staff Sergeant Marcus Vega, 12 years in the Navy, multiple deployments, respected by his chain of command. He's been at Fallon for 6 years, and we believe he's been operating this predatory network the entire time. The photograph of Vega appeared on screen. He was 34, fit, dark hair and a regulation cut, the kind of face that would blend into any military crowd. Unremarkable except for his eyes. Even in a service photograph, something about his expression suggested cruelty held in check by military discipline. Sarah felt cold settle in her stomach. I know this man. Martinez looked up sharply. Explain. My father served with a Marcus Vega, different unit, but they were both stationed at Naval Air Station Lemoore in 2008. Dad died in a training accident in 2009 when I was 13. But I remember Vega coming to the funeral. He gave a speech about my father's service, about brotherhood, about how the SEAL community takes care of its own. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Lieutenant, I need you to understand something. The man who came to your father's funeral might have been genuine. The man operating at NAS Fallon right now is a predator who's assaulted at least 17 women and gotten away with it because the system protects him. People change, especially when they discover they can commit crimes without consequences. Sarah stared at Vega's photograph, trying to reconcile the man who'd comforted her grieving mother with the monster described in these reports. What do you need from me? Martinez closed the tablet. NCIS has tried standard investigations. We've interviewed victims, reviewed evidence, analyzed patterns. Everything points to systematic abuse enabled by institutional protection. But we can't get convictions because we don't have irrefutable proof. Victims recant under pressure. Evidence disappears. Witnesses develop amnesia. The chain of command closes ranks. Every legal avenue has been exhausted. So you want an undercover operation. I want you to infiltrate the network. Martinez's voice was steady, but his eyes held something Sarah had never seen before in a superior officer. Regret. You'll pose as a newly transferred logistics officer. You'll attend their social events. You'll document everything, and when they target you, because they will target you, you'll gather evidence comprehensive enough that no defense attorney, no corrupt commander, no institutional protection can make it disappear. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah understood immediately what Martinez was really saying. He was asking her to become bait, to allow herself to be victimized, to endure assault for the sake of evidence. You're asking me to let them hurt me. I'm asking you to complete the hardest mission any operator ever faces. Martinez leaned forward. I've sent SEALs into hostile territory knowing some wouldn't come back. I've ordered men to sacrifice themselves for strategic objectives. I've made the calculations that turn human beings into acceptable losses. But Lieutenant, what I'm asking you to do is different. I'm asking you to walk into a situation where you'll be assaulted, where you'll be degraded, where you'll be violated. And I'm asking you to endure it long enough to document everything. That's not combat, that's something worse. Why me? Because you're one of the best tactical operators in naval special warfare. Because you have the training to survive whatever they do. Because you have the discipline to maintain operational focus while enduring trauma. Because you're a woman, which makes you vulnerable to their targeting. And because, Martinez paused, because I've watched your career for 6 years, Lieutenant, since the day you graduated BUD/S training, since you became the 47th woman to earn the Trident. I've read every after-action report from your deployments. You're not just skilled, you're committed to something larger than yourself. You understand sacrifice in ways most people never will. Sarah's mind was already running tactical calculations, infiltration timeline, evidence requirements, extraction protocols, risk assessment. But underneath the professional analysis, something personal was stirring. 17 women had reported assaults and been silenced. 17 women had trusted the system and been betrayed. How many more had stayed silent because they'd watched those 17 get destroyed for speaking up? What's the authorization? Full operational discretion under Title 10, United States Code, Section 1585. You'll have NCIS support, encrypted communications equipment, and evidence-gathering technology built into standard fitness trackers. Everything you see, everything you hear, everything that happens will be transmitted in real time to secure servers with triple redundancy. Martinez pulled out a folder stamped with classification markings. Your cover identity is established. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, Logistics Coordination Officer, rotating through for a 6-week training assessment. Boring, administrative, the kind of assignment that makes operators tune out. Sarah noticed the authorization came from Deputy Director Walsh, not the typical NCIS chain for undercover operations. She filed the detail away. Operational security sometimes required unusual approval channels, but it was worth remembering. And the timeline? 6 weeks maximum. We've analyzed Vega's pattern. He targets new female personnel within the first 2 weeks. Initial contact is friendly, professional, building trust. By week 3, the invitations start. Week 4, the pressure increases. Week 5, the assault occurs. We'll extract you immediately after evidence is secured, or if you're in life-threatening danger, whichever comes first. Sarah opened the folder, scanning the operational parameters. Every detail was meticulously planned, from her cover story to extraction protocols to legal justifications for evidence gathering. But one element was conspicuously absent. What happens if I fight back? If they attack and I defend myself? Martinez met her eyes. Then the operation fails. If you fight, they'll claim you initiated violence. If you resist, they'll mark you as hostile and target someone else. If you extract early, will have partial evidence at best, the kind that gets dismissed in court. Lieutenant, the only way this works is if you let them commit crimes. Fully, completely, irrefutably, while cameras record everything. That means enduring whatever they do until the evidence is comprehensive enough for convictions that stick. The weight of what he was asking settled over Sarah like tactical gear. Heavy, restrictive, necessary. She thought about her father, about the speech Vega had given at his funeral, about brotherhood and honor and taking care of your own. Then she thought about 17 women who'd served their country and been assaulted by men wearing the same uniform, protected by officers who valued unit cohesion over justice. When do I start? Martinez pulled out a plane ticket. Transport leaves Miramar at 1400 hours. You'll arrive at Fallon by 1630. Check in with base administration by 1800. Your first mandatory social event is scheduled for Friday night, 3 days from now. We estimate you'll be targeted within the first 2 events, assaulted by the 3rd or 4th. The average operational timeline is 3 to 4 weeks. And if something goes wrong? If they escalate faster than expected? Emergency extraction is 90 seconds away at all times. Martinez handed her a small device disguised as a standard military ID holder. Squeeze this twice rapidly, and a tactical team breaches whatever building you're in. But Lieutenant, understand what extraction means. It means mission failure. It means Vega and his network continue operating. It means the next woman who reports assault gets dismissed, just like the previous 17. So extraction is a last resort for life-threatening situations only. Sarah took the device, felt its weight in her palm. 90 seconds. A lot could happen in 90 seconds. A lot of damage could be done, a lot of trauma inflicted, a lot of violations committed. But 90 seconds was also fast by tactical standards. Some operations required operators to endure hostile situations for hours, days, weeks before extraction was possible. I need one thing from you, sir. Name it. I need your word that if I do this, if I endure whatever comes, the evidence will be used. That these men will be prosecuted to the fullest extent. That Commander Hayes and anyone else who enabled them faces consequences. That the system that protected predators for 3 years gets burned down and rebuilt. Because if I'm going to sacrifice my safety, my dignity, potentially my psychological health, I need to know it's for something permanent, something that protects every woman who serves after me. Martinez stood, came to attention, and offered his hand. You have my word as a SEAL, as an officer, and as someone who spent 43 years defending this country. The evidence you gather will be used to destroy everyone involved in this conspiracy, from the predators to the enablers to anyone who helped cover it up. And the reforms that follow will change how the military handles sexual assault for decades to come. You'll be saving lives, Lieutenant, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. That's worth any price. Sarah shook his hand, felt the strength in his grip, the calluses from decades of hard training. Understood, sir. I accept the mission. The briefing continued for another 90 minutes. Technical details about the recording equipment, a fitness tracker that looked standard issue but contained military-grade surveillance technology with encrypted transmission, backup recording devices sewn into clothing, GPS tracking accurate to within 3 feet. Sarah memorized every specification, every protocol, every contingency plan. Martinez walked her through Vega's complete profile. The man had been a model sailor for 12 years, 3 combat deployments, multiple commendations, no disciplinary incidents on official record. But the pattern analysis told a different story. Every base Vega had been stationed at, complaints about sexual assault had spiked. 2 previous installations had seen similar patterns before victims were transferred and complaints disappeared. Vega wasn't just a predator, he was experienced, practiced, sophisticated enough to operate for over a decade without facing consequences. His network consisted of 5 core members and 3 enablers. Petty Officer Jake Morrison, 31, loud, aggressive, always filming everything. Corporal Dean Hayes, 27, Commander Hayes's nephew, explaining how the institutional protection worked. 3 others whose roles were support rather than primary assault, but complicity made them equally guilty under military and federal law. Sarah studied each face, memorized names, identifying marks, background information. These were the men she'd be spending the next several weeks with, the men who'd assault her while cameras recorded everything. Professional detachment was crucial. This was tactical intelligence gathering, not personal vendetta. Emotion compromised operational effectiveness. But underneath the professional analysis, Sarah felt something cold and determined settling into place. These men had spent years destroying women's lives, had operated with impunity because the system protected them. That ended now. One way or another, whether through evidence gathering or tactical engagement, their operation was finished. At 11:45 hours, Martinez walked Sarah to the elevator. "One more thing, Lieutenant." His voice was quieter now, less formal. "I'm 65 years old. I've been retired for 8 years. I took this consulting position with NCIS specifically to investigate this case because I couldn't stand by knowing predators were operating in the SEAL community. In the military, I spent my life serving. But my health isn't what it used to be. Heart condition, controlled with medication, but still a risk. I'm telling you this because you need to know your primary support might not be available for the full operation." Sarah processed this new variable. Medical instability and operational support was a complication, but not insurmountable. If Martinez became unavailable, standard protocol would transition control to the next senior NCIS handler. "Do I need to know your backup's identity?" Special Agent Sarah Chen, 15 years with NCIS, solid investigator, but she doesn't have tactical experience. Martinez met her eyes. "If something happens to me, if I can't maintain communication, trust your training, trust your instincts. And remember, this mission is voluntary. You can abort at any time without prejudice. Don't let pride or determination override survival instincts." "Understood, sir." The elevator arrived. Martinez extended his hand one final time. "Good hunting, Lieutenant. And Sarah, when this is over, when Vega and his network are in federal prison, remember that what you endured wasn't weakness. Accepting personal harm to achieve strategic objectives is the hardest form of courage. Anyone can fight when threatened. It takes something else entirely to endure violation for the sake of evidence, to accept personal cost for collective protection. That's not just bravery, that's moral courage at the highest level." The doors closed. Sarah descended alone, the weight of the mission settling over her shoulders like body armor. Heavy, restrictive, protective in its own way. By 1400 hours, she was aboard a military transport heading northeast toward Nevada, toward a mission unlike anything she trained for, toward an operation that would either change military justice forever or destroy her in the attempt. The landscape below shifted from California coastline to desert mountains to the vast emptiness of Nevada. Sarah watched through the small window, her reflection ghostly against the afternoon sky. 28 years old, 6 years as a SEAL, 42 successful combat missions, and now she was about to undertake an operation where success meant allowing herself to be victimized, where tactical victory required personal violation, where the only way to protect future victims was to become one herself. The transport touched down at NAS Fallon at 16:27 hours. Sarah grabbed her single duffel bag, standard issue gear packed with precision, and stepped into the Nevada heat. The base looked clean, almost pristine, fresh paint on buildings, manicured lawns, everything maintained to standards that suggested pride in appearance. But Sarah had learned long ago that clean exteriors often hid rotting foundations. that institutional corruption thrived best where surfaces looked immaculate. She checked in with base administration at 17:43 hours, received her temporary quarters assignment in Building 7, collected her access badge and meal card from a corporal who barely made eye contact. The woman was young, maybe 22, with tired eyes and the kind of careful movements that suggested someone who'd learned to make herself invisible. Before Sarah could ask any questions, the corporal slid a map across the desk. Your BOQ is in the annex, room 214. Dining facility hours are posted. If anyone invites you to recreation building events after hours, you should probably... The corporal glanced at the security camera in the corner, adjusted her phrasing carefully. You should probably check your schedule first. Make sure you're not overcommitted. It was the most careful warning Sarah had ever received. The woman's eyes said everything her words couldn't. Danger here. Women aren't safe. Be careful. Thank you, Corporal. I appreciate the advice. Yes, ma'am. Welcome to Fallon. Sarah walked to her quarters, counting cameras as she moved. 3 visible, standard placement, all focused on entry points, none covering blind corners. Either incompetent security design or deliberate gaps. She suspected the latter. Her room was small, functional, standard BOQ configuration with a bed, desk, wall locker, and private bathroom. Sarah unpacked with methodical precision, placing her gear in tactical positions, equipment accessible within seconds if needed. Then she activated the fitness tracker. The device looked like any commercial model, black band with digital display showing heart rate, steps, calories. But the technology inside was military grade. High-definition camera disguised as a sensor. Directional microphones sensitive enough to capture whispered conversations across a room. Encrypted transmission to NCIS servers every 30 seconds with triple redundancy to prevent data loss. And biometric monitoring that would track Sarah's heart rate, stress levels, and physical indicators throughout the operation. The display flickered once, confirming activation. A message appeared in tiny text. Recording active. Transmission confirmed. Mission status. Operational. Sarah activated her secondary communication system, a microscopic earpiece paired with a subvocal microphone sewn into her collar. The device would allow direct communication with NCIS command without visible movement or audible speech. She tested it with a whisper. "Com check." Martinez's voice came through immediately. "Lima Charlie, 5x5, you're live, Lieutenant." The dual system provided redundancy. The fitness tracker recorded everything passively. The comm system allowed active communication in emergency extraction calls. Sarah looked at her reflection in the small mirror above the sink. The woman staring back looked like any other junior officer. Regulation haircut, neutral expression, nothing remarkable about her appearance. But underneath the surface was a SEAL operator about to undertake the hardest mission of her career, about to walk into a predatory network and let them hurt her. All for the sake of evidence, all to protect women she'd never meet. The mission had begun. At 18:30 hours, Sarah headed to the dining facility, maintaining the demeanor of a newly transferred officer trying to orient herself. The facility was crowded with personnel from the evening shift, conversations loud, the smell of institutional food mixing with disinfectant. Sarah grabbed a tray, moved through the line, selected items that would provide adequate nutrition without being memorable. Grilled chicken, rice, vegetables, water. Fuel, not pleasure. She found a table in the corner, positioned herself with her back to the wall, a habit from combat deployments where situational awareness meant survival. From this vantage point, she could observe the entire dining facility, catalog personnel, identify patterns of behavior. It didn't take long to spot them. 6 men entered together, loud, confident, moving through the room like they owned it. Staff Sergeant Marcus Vega led the group, his bearing suggesting leadership without formal authority. Petty Officer Morrison followed close behind, phone already out, filming everything like the facility was his personal content platform. Corporal Dean Hayes brought up the rear, his resemblance to Commander Hayes, subtle but unmistakable in the jawline and eyes. They moved to the serving line, cutting ahead of junior personnel who stepped aside without protest. The kind of violation that was small enough to go unreported, but significant enough to establish dominance. Vega made comments to the female server, too quiet for Sarah to hear, but loud enough to make the woman's face flush. Morrison filmed her reaction, laughing. Sarah's heart rate remained steady at 58 beats per minute. Professional observation, clinical analysis. These were the targets, the predators Martinez had briefed her about. And in 3 days she'd be sitting across from them at a mandatory social event, beginning the process of infiltration that would end with her assault and their imprisonment. She finished her meal, disposed of her tray, and left the dining facility. But she'd seen enough. The pattern was already visible. Vega's group operated with practiced efficiency, testing boundaries, establishing dominance, identifying potential victims through careful observation of who complied, who resisted, who could be isolated. Over the next 2 days, Sarah established her cover identity through routine activities. She reported to Commander Hayes for in-processing, endured the woman's false warmth, and carefully worded suggestions about attending morale events to show team spirit. She walked the base perimeter, memorizing blind spots, exit routes, positions where NCIS tactical teams could stage for rapid extraction. She observed Vega's network in action, cataloging their patterns, documenting their tactics through her fitness tracker. And she watched the female personnel. They moved differently here, always in groups after 1,700 hours, always scanning surroundings, always positioning themselves with backs to walls in common areas. The body language of prey animals in predator territory. Sarah recognized it because she'd seen it before in villages where insurgents operated with impunity, where local populations had learned that survival required vigilance and compliance. On Thursday morning, 72 hours after her arrival, Sarah was in the base gym when she observed the first major incident. A young female Marine, maybe 23, was using the bench press when Morrison approached, blocking her path to the water fountain. "You missed a spot on that bench, sweetheart. Wipe it down again." The woman, older than Morrison by rank and age, bent to wipe the already clean bench rather than correct him. Morrison's smile was predatory. "That's better. You're real thorough when you want to be." The other men laughed. The women in the gym found reasons to leave. Sarah documented everything through her fitness tracker, maintaining her workout routine while the camera captured Morrison establishing dominance over a superior officer through casual humiliation. That evening at 20:45 hours, Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Friday night, 2100 hours. Recreation building. Team bonding event. Attendance strongly encouraged. See you there, Lieutenant." The message was unsigned, but Sarah didn't need a signature. Vega had noticed her, had identified her as a potential target, and now the invitation had been extended, wrapped in military language about team cohesion and unit morale. But underneath, carrying the same threat that 17 women before her had received. Attend or be marked as hostile. Participate or face consequences. Sarah's response was brief. "Roger that. What's the dress code?" The reply came 30 seconds later. "Casual. No rank. Just people being people." Translation: come unarmed. Come without the protection of military hierarchy. Come ready to be vulnerable. Sarah set her phone down and activated her secure comm system, transmitted an encrypted message to Martinez. "First contact established. Friday 2100, proceeding as planned." His response took 2 minutes, long enough that Sarah wondered if something was wrong. Then the message appeared. "Confirmed. Remember, tactical teams are 90 seconds out. Emergency extraction on your signal. But only if absolutely necessary. We need comprehensive evidence." Sarah lay in her quarters that night, staring at the ceiling, running through tactical scenarios, infiltration protocols, evidence gathering requirements, threat assessment, extraction contingencies, every variable calculated, every contingency planned. But underneath the professional preparation, something more personal was stirring. Tomorrow night she'd walk into that recreation building knowing what would happen, knowing these men would target her, knowing she'd have to endure whatever came to gather evidence. Operational sacrifice for strategic gain. Accepting harm to achieve the mission. The hardest challenge any operator ever faced. And Sarah Mitchell, Navy SEAL, had volunteered for it. Because 17 women before her had tried to get justice through normal channels and been destroyed by the system. Because predators like Vega operated with impunity when institutions valued cohesion over accountability. Because someone had to stand in the gap between abusers and victims and refuse to move until justice was served, even if standing in that gap meant becoming the sacrifice that exposed the truth. Her father had taught her that honor meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, that warriors served something larger than personal safety, that the uniform carried obligations more important than comfort or convenience. He died in a training accident when Sarah was 13, crushed in a helicopter crash that investigation reports called mechanical failure and whispered conversations called negligence. The military had given him a hero's funeral, full honors, folded flag presented to her mother while a bugler played taps. And Marcus Vega had stood beside the grave, delivering a speech about brotherhood and honor and how the SEAL community takes care of its own. Sarah remembered being comforted by those words, by the promise that her father's death meant something, that his sacrifice hadn't been wasted. Now, 15 years later, she wondered if Vega had already been a predator then, if his words about honor had been lies even while he spoke them, if the man who'd promised her family that SEALs protect their own had spent the last decade destroying women who wore the same uniform. Tomorrow night, Sarah would find out, would gather evidence, would document everything, and would begin the process of destroying the man who'd once comforted a 13-year-old girl at her father's funeral. The mission timeline was set, the trap was prepared, and in 24 hours, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell would walk into that recreation building and become bait in an operation that would either reform military justice or destroy her in the attempt. Outside her window, the Nevada desert stretched vast and empty under starlight, indifferent to human struggles, indifferent to justice or injustice, indifferent to the battle about to begin. Sarah watched the stars through her window, counting constellations her father had taught her to identify during camping trips when she was young. Orion, Cassiopeia, Ursa Major, the same stars that had guided warriors for millennia, the same sky that covered every battlefield where operators fought and bled and sacrificed for something larger than themselves. Tomorrow, Sarah would join that tradition, not through kinetic action or tactical engagement, but through a different kind of courage, the courage to be vulnerable in the service of justice, the courage to endure violation to protect others, the courage to sacrifice personal dignity for operational success. Her pulse remained steady, her breathing calm, and her resolve absolute. The last hours before operational execution were always the longest. The waiting, the preparation, the knowledge that everything was about to change. Sarah had experienced this before every deployment, this quiet moment where the future hung suspended between planning and execution, between safety and danger, between the person you were and the person combat would make you become. But this was different. This mission wouldn't be fought in foreign deserts against enemy combatants. It would be fought here, on American soil, against men wearing the same uniform, protected by the same system, serving the same country. And the battlefield wouldn't be some distant landscape, but her own body, her own dignity, her own psychological resilience. At 0200 hours, Sarah finally slept. Dreamless, disciplined, controlled. The sleep of someone who'd made peace with what was coming. And when she woke at 0530 hours, it was with the same clarity she'd felt before every combat operation. Fear was present, but controlled. Doubt existed, but contained. The mission was clear, the objective defined. All that remained was execution. Friday, November 17th, 2024. The day that would either change military justice forever or become another statistic in the long history of predators protected by institutional corruption. Sarah Mitchell was ready. The hunters thought they'd found new prey. They had no idea they'd invited a SEAL operator into their trap. And by the time they realized their mistake, every crime would be documented, every violation recorded, every predator exposed. The war was about to begin. And this time, justice was coming armed with evidence that couldn't be dismissed, protected by determination that couldn't be broken, carried by a warrior who understood that sometimes the hardest battles required becoming the sacrifice that saved everyone else. 21 hours until mission execution. Sarah began her final preparations. The outcome was uncertain. The risk was real. The cost would be personal. But failure meant 17 more women would suffer what the previous 17 had suffered. And that was unacceptable. So Sarah Mitchell, Navy SEAL, prepared to walk into hell. Not because she wanted to, but because someone had to. And she'd volunteered to be that someone. The mission was clear. The trap was set. All that remained was springing it. Friday arrived with a kind of desert clarity that made everything feel surreal. Sarah spent the morning conducting her cover duties, reviewing logistics reports in a borrowed office, attending briefings that meant nothing, playing the role of a junior officer on a routine rotation. But her mind was already 3 steps ahead, running through tonight's operation with the kind of tactical precision that had kept her alive through 6 years of combat deployments. At 14:30 hours, her secure phone vibrated. A message from Martinez. Final check before operation. Confirm equipment status and mental readiness. Sarah stepped into a supply closet, ensured she was alone, and activated the encrypted voice channel. Equipment green across the board, sir. Fitness tracker transmitting. Backup recorder operational. GPS accurate to 2 feet. Comm system live. I'm ready. There was a pause on the line, longer than normal protocol allowed. Then Martinez's voice came through, rougher than usual. Lieutenant, I need you to understand something. Once you walk into that building tonight, you're in enemy territory. These men have committed crimes for 6 years without facing consequences. They're confident, practiced, dangerous. If at any point you feel the situation is beyond your control, you extract. Mission success isn't worth your life or permanent psychological damage. Understood, sir. But with respect, mission success is exactly why I'm doing this. 17 women before me couldn't get justice because they didn't have evidence. I'm going to get that evidence, whatever it takes. Martinez's breathing was labored, concerning. Sarah, can I call you Sarah for a moment? Not as your commanding officer, but as someone who's seen too many good operators destroyed by missions that ask too much? Of course, sir. What we're asking you to do tonight isn't fair. It isn't right. And if there was any other way to stop these predators, I'd take it. But there isn't. The system has failed 17 times. Evidence has been dismissed 17 times. And it's going to keep failing until we gather proof so overwhelming that even the most corrupt commanders can't ignore it. You're the only operator with the skills and courage to do this, but that doesn't make it any less brutal. Sarah felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the professional armor she'd maintained for 3 days. I know, sir, but my father taught me that warriors protect those who can't protect themselves. That's what I'm doing tonight, protecting every woman who'll serve at this base after me. That's worth the cost. Your father would be proud of you. Martinez's voice was thick with emotion he rarely showed. And Sarah, when this is over, When Vega is in prison and the system is reformed, remember that what you endure tonight isn't weakness. It's the hardest form of strength. Now go, complete the mission. And come back in one piece so I can buy you a beer and tell you stories about your father that your mother probably never shared. The line went dead. Sarah stood in the darkness of the supply closet, allowing herself 30 seconds of genuine emotion before compartmentalizing it away. Martinez had known her father, had served with him, had probably watched the same training accident that took his life, and now he was sending her into a different kind of danger, one where the enemy wore friendly faces and the wounds wouldn't be visible on the outside. At 1900 hours, Sarah returned to her quarters and prepared. She showered, methodical and thorough, washing away the day's sweat and tension. Then she dressed in the carefully selected clothing that would make her appear casual, approachable, vulnerable. Olive green V-neck shirt, fitted but not provocative. Cargo pants, standard issue. Combat boots, because even undercover she refused to wear anything that compromised tactical mobility. Hair down around her shoulders instead of the regulation bun, softening her appearance, making her look less like a warrior and more like prey. The fitness tracker went on her left wrist, fully charged, already transmitting her elevated heart rate to NCIS servers. 72 beats per minute now, up from her resting 58. Not fear exactly, anticipation. The same pre-mission adrenaline she'd felt before every combat operation. Her body preparing for violence, even though her mind knew this violence would be directional, inflicted upon her rather than deployed by her. The backup recording device went into her boot, a redundancy in case the primary system failed. The emergency beacon was sewn into her pants hem, 2 rapid squeezes away from extraction. The earpiece sat invisible in her ear canal, the subvocal mic against her throat. And finally, she checked her appearance in the mirror one last time. The woman staring back looked young, vulnerable, exactly what Vega and his network targeted. But underneath the surface was a SEAL operator about to infiltrate the most dangerous mission of her career. At 20:047 hours, Sarah left her quarters and walked toward the recreation building. The base was quiet at this hour, most personnel either off-duty in their quarters or finishing late shifts. The recreation building sat isolated at the edge of the facility, deliberately positioned away from main traffic areas, windows covered with blackout curtains, single-door entry, no exterior cameras visible. Perfect location for activities you didn't want witnessed. Sarah paused 50 feet away, controlled her breathing, centered her focus. Then she walked to the door and knocked. Morrison answered, beer in hand, music loud behind him. His smile was practiced, friendly, the expression of someone who'd perfected the art of seeming harmless. "Lieutenant Mitchell, glad you could make it. Come on in. We're just getting started." The room held 14 people, 6 core members of Vega's network, 3 enablers whose role was support rather than primary assault, and 5 women who looked like they desperately wanted to be anywhere else. Their body language told the story. Shoulders hunched, eyes down, careful movements that suggested people who'd learned to make themselves small in threatening spaces. Vega approached immediately, beer in each hand. "Lieutenant Mitchell, welcome to the team. Here, first one's mandatory. House rules. Everyone drinks." Sarah took the beer, noting how he'd pushed it into her hands before she could refuse, establishing control through a gesture that seemed friendly but wasn't optional. The fitness tracker recorded everything: the forced alcohol, the subtle coercion, the first small violation in what would become a night of escalating crimes. "I don't usually drink on duty days," Sarah said, testing boundaries, seeing how they'd respond to resistance. "Nobody's on duty here." Morrison clapped her shoulder, grip harder than friendly. "This is team bonding, relaxation, getting to know each other without all the rank bullshit. You're not a lieutenant tonight, you're just Sarah, and Sarah drinks with the team." The pressure was subtle but clear. Comply or be marked as hostile. Participate or face consequences. Sarah lifted the beer to her lips, pretended to drink, actually spilled most of it down her shirt, making it look like enthusiasm rather than avoidance. The cold liquid soaked through the fabric, making her more uncomfortable, but documenting the coercion on camera. The night progressed with calculated escalation, games designed to humiliate, dares that tested boundaries, challenges that forced compliance. Sarah observed the pattern, recognized the sophisticated grooming behavior. They didn't assault immediately, they built toward it, each step small enough to seem harmless. The cumulative effect designed to break down resistance and normalize violation. At 21:34 hours, they started targeting the other women directly. A private whose name tag read Cooper was pulled into a game of truth or dare. When she chose truth, Hayes mocked her for being boring. When she switched to dare, he made her sit on Morrison's lap for 3 rounds. The woman's face flushed with embarrassment and suppressed anger, but she complied because the alternative was worse. Sarah's fitness tracker recorded everything: the coerced physical contact, the sexual harassment disguised as games, the way the men worked together with practiced efficiency, one creating the pressure while others provided social reinforcement. At 2,156 hours, they turned their attention to Sarah directly. Mitchell, truth or dare? Vega's eyes were calculating, measuring her response. Truth. Boring. Morrison groaned. Come on, don't be a pussy. Dare. Let's see if you're actually fun or just another stuck-up officer. The language was deliberately crude, designed to provoke a reaction. Sarah could correct it, could assert authority, could stop this now with evidence of harassment and hostile environment. But that wasn't enough. 17 women had reported harassment and been dismissed. She needed worse crimes, irrefutable violations that couldn't be explained away. Fine. Dare. Vega's smile widened. I dare you to take off that shirt. It's hot in here anyway. Show the team you're not too good for us. Complete silence. Everyone watching, waiting to see how the new lieutenant would respond to a direct challenge. Sarah felt the moment crystallize, the decision point that would determine the rest of the operation. She could refuse, could maintain boundaries, could extract with evidence of verbal harassment, or she could let them escalate, let them reveal exactly how far they'd go. That's inappropriate, Staff Sergeant. It's a game. What? You can't take a joke? Vega's voice hardened. Jesus, another stuck-up bitch who thinks she's too good for us. I'm not taking off my shirt. Then you're not really playing. You're just here judging us, looking down on us, thinking you're better because you're an officer. The room pressure built. Sarah could feel it, the social dynamics shifting from playful to threatening. This was the moment Vega's network used to identify who would resist and who would comply. The women who fought back got marked for more aggressive targeting. The women who submitted got assaulted. I think I should leave. Hayes moved to block the door. His movement was casual but deliberate, establishing that exit required his permission. Nobody leaves early, ma'am. That's disrespectful to Vega. He puts these things together for team building. And you're just going to bail? That's fucked up. The profanity was intentional, testing whether Sarah would correct him for addressing an officer inappropriately. She didn't. Correcting him would establish hierarchy, would remind everyone that ranks existed even in this space. And establishing hierarchy would end the evidence gathering before they committed the crimes she needed documented. Move, Corporal. That's an order. Don't pull rank here, Lieutenant. Hayes's voice went cold. Rank doesn't mean shit at these events. You want to leave? Make us move you. Physical obstruction of a superior officer. Insubordination. Unlawful detention. All documented on camera. Sarah's heart rate elevated to 84 beats per minute, captured by her biometric monitoring. But she didn't fight, didn't use the hand-to-hand combat training that could disable Hayes in under 3 seconds. Because fighting meant mission failure. Sit down, Mitchell. Vega pointed to a chair. Sit down before you make this worse for yourself. Sarah sat, not because she had to, but because tactical objectives required allowing them to believe they'd won. Morrison's hand went to her shoulder, pressing down, establishing physical dominance. The fitness tracker recorded the contact, the pressure, the violation of personal space without consent. See, that's better. Vega's voice softened into something almost friendly, the tone shift deliberate and manipulative. We're not unreasonable. We just expect respect. You came to our event. You accepted our invitation. Now you need to participate like everyone else. No special treatment for officers. For the next 47 minutes, Sarah endured escalating harassment while cameras recorded everything. They forced more alcohol, pushing beers into her hands with threats disguised as jokes. They made crude comments about her appearance, each one testing boundaries. They invaded her personal space, hands on shoulders, on arms, casual touches that weren't casual at all. And they targeted the other women with increasing aggression. Cooper was pulled into multiple dares, each one more humiliating than the last. A corporal named Martinez tried to intervene when Hayes grabbed another woman too roughly, and Hayes shoved her hard enough to make her stumble. The violence was brief, controlled, but unmistakable. A warning to everyone else about what happened to women who resisted. At 22:47 hours, Sarah's secure phone vibrated in her pocket. A text from Martinez. Biometric data showing elevated stress. Confirm you're maintaining operational control. She couldn't respond without exposing the device, but the message itself was concerning. Martinez was monitoring her vital signs closely enough to notice changes. That suggested he was worried, perhaps more worried than operational parameters justified. Sarah made a mental note to check in with him immediately after extraction, assuming extraction happened before his health failed. The night spiraled darker, music got louder, alcohol flowed more freely, the women's faces showed increasing desperation, and Vega's network operated with the confidence of men who'd done this dozens of times, who knew exactly how far they could push before someone broke, who'd perfected the art of systematic abuse disguised as team bonding. At 23:18 hours, Morrison pulled out his phone. Let's get some pictures. Document the fun we're having. Team memories. Sarah's blood went cold. Pictures meant blackmail, meant evidence they could use against victims to ensure silence, meant control that extended beyond this room. But pictures also meant more documentation of their crimes, more proof that this was systematic rather than spontaneous. Everyone group up. Morrison directed the positioning like a photographer at a party. Big smiles. Show how much we love team building. Sarah stood where directed, surrounded by Vega's network, their hands on her shoulders, her waist, positioning that looked friendly on camera, but felt invasive in reality. She smiled, but her eyes were calculating tactical data. Every face captured, every person involved, every crime witnessed by multiple cameras, both theirs and hers. Perfect. Vega reviewed the photos. See, this is fun. This is what unit cohesion looks like. He showed the images to Morrison, both of them laughing at something Sarah couldn't hear. Then Vega's expression shifted, eyes fixing on Sarah with new intensity. You know what? I don't think Mitchell's really integrating yet. Still got that officer stick up her ass. We need to help her relax. How you want to do that? Hayes asked, grin spreading. Truth or dare, but this time, no backing out. You pick dare, you do it. No exceptions. Vega's voice carried finality. Mitchell, truth or dare? This was escalation beyond verbal harassment. Whatever came next would be physical, invasive, potentially the assault she'd been waiting for. Sarah could refuse, could trigger extraction, could end this with evidence of everything that had happened so far. Harassment, coercion, assault on Martinez when Hayes shoved her, unlawful detention, hostile environment. But none of it was severe enough to guarantee the long sentences these men deserved. Harassment got disciplinary action. Coercion got reprimands. Even the physical assault on Martinez would likely result in minor charges, reduced in plea bargaining, forgotten within months. To truly destroy this network, Sarah needed them to commit crimes so heinous that juries would have no sympathy, that defense attorneys couldn't minimize, that commanding officers couldn't dismiss. Dare, Sarah said quietly. Vega's smile was predatory. Brave. Stupid, but brave. He looked around the room, building anticipation. Let me think. What dare is appropriate for an officer who thinks she's too good for us? Morrison leaned close, whispered something. Vega's eyes lit up with cruel delight. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, Mitchell, strip to your underwear right here, right now. Show everyone you're actually one of us. The room went silent. Cooper made a small sound of protest. Martinez's eyes filled with tears. The other women stared at the floor, having seen this escalation before, knowing what came next. Sarah felt tactical clarity settle over her like armor. This was the line. The moment that separated documentation from participation. The boundary she wouldn't cross regardless of mission objectives. Number. What? I said no, I'm not doing that. Vega's expression shifted from amusement to anger. That's not how this works. You chose dare. You do the dare. I changed my mind. I'm leaving. Sarah stood. Hayes blocked her path immediately, but she'd expected that. What she hadn't expected was Morrison grabbing her arm with enough force to leave bruises. Physical assault captured on multiple cameras from multiple angles. Sit down, Lieutenant. Let go of me. That's an order. Orders don't mean shit here. Morrison's grip tightened. You're going to sit down and do what you're told, or we're going to make you. This was it, the moment of decision. Sarah could fight now, could break Morrison's grip and Hayes' nose and Vega's jaw in under 10 seconds, could justify it as self-defense, could extract with evidence of assault and attempted sexual assault. But fighting meant the operation ended here, meant they'd never commit the worst crimes, meant defense attorneys would argue she'd provoked them through her resistance. Or she could endure whatever came next, could let them commit fully, could gather evidence so overwhelming that no jury in America would acquit them. Sarah made her choice. She sat down. Morrison kept his hand on her shoulder. Hayes stood at the door, blocking exit, and Vega leaned close, voice dropping to something cold and threatening. You don't get it yet, do you? You're not in control here. You don't give orders. You don't make decisions. You do what we tell you when we tell you. Understand? This is illegal. You're assaulting a superior officer. Who's going to believe you? Vega cut her off. You came here voluntarily. You drank with us. You played games. You're in civilian clothes at a social event. You really think anyone's going to believe you were forced? Sarah felt ice in her veins. Because he was right. That was exactly how this system worked. Exactly why 17 women before her had been dismissed. Without irrefutable evidence, it became a credibility contest that victims always lost. I have evidence. What evidence? Vega laughed. Your word against ours? Everyone in this room will say you participated willingly, that you're just crying assault because you regret your choices. That's how this always ends, Mitchell. They never believe the women. They always believe us. There it was, the confession she needed. Admission that this was systematic, that they'd done it before, that the system protected them, all captured on recording. How many women have you done this to? Sarah asked quietly, giving him rope to hang himself. Does it matter? Morrison said. They all ended up transferred or quiet. None of them stuck around to make trouble. Neither will you. Why do you think that? Because I've been doing this for 6 years across 3 different bases. Vega's voice carried absolute confidence. Because the system protects us. Because commanding officers care more about unit cohesion than some female personnel claiming they got their feelings hurt. Because we're valuable, experienced leaders. And you? You're replaceable. More confession. Pattern of abuse across multiple installations. Institutional protection. Everything Martinez needed to build a conspiracy case that would bury everyone involved. What happens now? Sarah asked, knowing the answer, but needing them to say it on camera. Now we teach you the same lesson we taught all the others. Vega's smile was ugly. That resistance is pointless. That fighting back makes it worse. That your best option is to do what you're told and keep your mouth shut. Hayes grabbed her other arm. Morrison maintained his grip. Vega stood directly in front of her, blocking any path to the door. 3 men holding a SEAL operator who could kill all of them in under a minute. They had no idea how badly they'd miscalculated. Strip, Vega ordered, or we strip you. Your choice. No, wrong answer. Morrison yanked her to standing with enough force to constitute assault. Hayes grabbed at her shirt, fingers fumbling with fabric. This was it, the assault on camera, irrefutable. Sarah could stop them now, could break free, could end this before it escalated further. But then Martinez stood up. Not the colonel, who was miles away monitoring from NCIS headquarters. Corporal Lisa Martinez, the young woman who'd been shoved earlier, who'd been assaulted by this same network 9 months ago and stayed silent because reporting had seemed pointless. She stood up despite knowing the consequences, despite having every reason to protect herself first. Stop. Just stop. Her voice shook, but her determination was clear. You don't have to do this. Everyone froze. Vega turned slowly, and Sarah saw murder in his eyes. Sit down, Martinez. No. The corporal's voice grew stronger. I'm not watching this again. I'm not staying silent while you destroy another person. This has to stop. Hayes released Sarah's shirt, moved toward Martinez. The threat was obvious, immediate. Sarah's tactical mind screamed at her to intervene. Morrison's voice carried years of practiced intimidation. They disappear. They get transferred. They get labeled as problems. You want that? I don't care anymore. Martinez's eyes filled with tears, but her stance didn't waver. Someone has to stop you. Someone has to speak up. Then Hayes hit her. Not hard enough for serious injury, but hard enough to split her lip and knock her down. Martinez hit the floor. Used it. Leave her alone, Sarah said, voice deadly calm. Your problem is with me. Leave Martinez out of this. Vega laughed. Oh, now you want to play hero. Where was this when we were giving you orders? I'm giving you one chance. Sarah's voice carried absolute authority despite her position. Let both of us leave right now. Walk away before it gets worse. Worse for who? Morrison grabbed her hair, yanked her head back. You're in no position to make threats. I'm not threatening, I'm warning. About what? About the fact that every single thing you've done tonight has been recorded. Every word, every action, every assault. All transmitted in real time to Naval. The one transmitting GPS coordinates and encrypted video to NCIS servers every 30 seconds. The one that's been documenting your operation since I walked through that door. Morrison grabbed her wrist, looked at the device. His face went pale. This is military-grade surveillance equipment. Who the fuck are you? Vega demanded, confidence cracking. Sarah smiled coldly. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, SEAL Team 6. I've been undercover for 12 days documenting your systematic abuse. Everything you've done tonight is on camera. The forced alcohol, the harassment, the assault, your confession about 6 years of crimes. All of it is evidence. All of it is going to bury you. Hayes's hands released her. Morrison stepped back. Vega's face cycled through emotions. Disbelief, fear, rage. You set us up. I gave you every opportunity to be professional. Sarah's voice was ice. You chose to be predators. That's on you. If this is real, why haven't your people come in yet? Vega was grasping now, looking for an explanation that made sense. Why are you still here? Because I needed you to commit fully. Needed evidence so overwhelming that no defense attorney could create doubt. needed your confession on camera. And you gave it to me. All of it. Vega's expression hardened. Then I guess we've got nothing to lose, do we? He nodded. We finish teaching this bitch her lesson. We make sure she understands what happens to women who come into our house and try to play games. And then we make sure she knows that reporting us would be the biggest mistake of her life. He unzipped his pants. Sarah understood what was coming. The final humiliation these predators had inflicted on victims before her. The ultimate violation designed to break spirits and ensure silence. She could stop it with one word to her comm system, could trigger extraction, could have NCIS tactical teams breaching the building in 90 seconds. But 90 seconds meant Vega would finish whatever he started, meant she'd endure the worst violation to gather the worst evidence. Personal cost for collective protection, mission completion. Sarah made her choice. She stayed silent. And Marcus Vega, confident in his impunity, committed the crime that would end his career and his freedom on camera in front of multiple witnesses with irrefutable evidence. The warm urine hit Sarah's face as Vega urinated on her, the liquid soaking through her already wet shirt, pooling on the floor around her knees, where Morrison and Hayes had forced her down. The smell was overwhelming, the humiliation absolute, and the hidden camera recorded every frame with military precision. "This is what you are," Vega said, zipping up. "This is what all of you are. Filthy bitches who need to be reminded where you belong." Morrison took his turn, then Hayes. 3 men using urination as a weapon, as control, as proof they could violate anyone without consequences. The women in the room were crying. Martinez was on the floor bleeding, watching in horror. And Sarah knelt in a puddle of urine, face soaked, shirt ruined, looking defeated. But her eyes were clear, her breathing steady, her mind counting seconds until mission parameters allowed engagement. And when Vega pulled out his phone to film the aftermath, to document what happened to women who threatened them, Sarah looked directly at the camera and smiled. Because every frame they recorded was evidence, every photo they took was proof, every word they spoke was confession. They thought they were documenting their victory. They were actually building the case that would destroy them. "Command, this is Mitchell." Sarah spoke into her subvocal microphone, the words picked up by the throat mic, but inaudible to everyone else. "Subjects have committed multiple assaults, including sexual assault on a federal officer. Evidence collection is complete. Execute arrest protocols immediately. Authorization code Delta 79er. Go." 3 seconds of silence, then the door exploded inward with controlled violence that came from operators who'd breached hostile compounds in war zones. 20 NCIS agents in tactical gear flooded the recreation building in under 4 seconds. Weapons drawn, commands shouted with absolute authority. "Hands where we can see them. On the ground. Now. Move and we will engage." Morrison tried to run. An agent's boot caught him behind the knee, sent him crashing face first into the floor. His phone skittered away, immediately bagged as evidence. Hayes reached for his device. An agent's hand clamped down with enough force to make bones creak. Special Agent Sarah Chen stepped through the door with cold precision. "Marcus Vega, you're under arrest for sexual assault of a federal officer, conspiracy, obstruction of justice." She turned to her team. "Cuff them, all of them, everyone who participated." The room erupted in chaos, suspects protesting, phones being confiscated, every device, every laptop, every piece of evidence tagged and bagged with methodical efficiency. Chen moved to where Sarah still knelt on the floor, soaked in urine, blood from her split lip drying on her chin. "Lieutenant Mitchell, you okay?" Sarah stood slowly, legs steady despite 20 minutes on her knees. "I'm functional. Mission complete. All evidence transmitted." Chen's expression softened slightly. "You did good work. Brutal work, but good. Nobody should have to endure what you just endured." 17 women before me endured worse without justice. Sarah's voice was level. This was necessary. Martinez approached, her own face bruised from Hayes' attack. You actually did it. You stopped them. We stopped them, Sarah corrected. You stood up. You intervened. That took courage. But before anyone could respond, Sarah's secure phone buzzed. A message from NCIS headquarters. And the words on the screen made her blood run cold. Colonel Martinez, hospitalized. Cardiac event at 2300, 19 hours. Condition critical. Deputy Director Walsh assumed operational command. He's requesting immediate debriefing before evidence processing. Sarah stared at the message, her tactical mind immediately recognizing the problem. Martinez had collapsed at exactly the moment when her biometric data would have shown maximum stress, when the assault was happening. Coincidence? Possibly, but Walsh assuming command was concerning. He hadn't been briefed on the operation, hadn't been part of the planning, had no operational context. And something about the timing felt wrong. Chen was reading the same message on her device. Her face had gone pale. We have a problem, Lieutenant. Walsh becoming operational commander means he now has access to all evidence, all witness statements, all case files. And I just received word that Commander Hayes tried to delete her email server 30 minutes ago. Someone tipped her off that we were executing arrests. Sarah felt cold settle in her stomach. We have a leak. Worse than a leak. Chen's voice was grim. We have someone actively protecting this network. Someone high enough in NCIS to know about classified undercover operations. Someone who tipped off Hayes that arrests were coming. Can you find them? Already working on it, Chen gestured to the tactical team. But Lieutenant, this means the conspiracy goes higher than we thought. Beyond this base, beyond Hayes, someone in our own agency has been protecting these predators. Then we find them and burn them down too. Sarah's voice carried absolute determination. Nobody gets a pass. Nobody walks away. Chen smiled grimly. I like the way you think. Now let's get you to medical before you collapse. But as agents led Vega and his accomplices away in handcuffs, as evidence was processed and statements were taken, Sarah stood in the doorway of the recreation building and looked out at the base she'd infiltrated. Somewhere out there, someone with power and access was trying to protect predators. Someone who'd been covering for Vega for 6 years. Someone who just made a fatal mistake by tipping off Hayes. Because Sarah Mitchell wasn't done. The mission had expanded. And she was going to find every person involved in this conspiracy and destroy them all. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, the enemy wore suits instead of uniforms. But they'd learned the same lesson Vega had learned. Underestimating a SEAL operator was a mistake you only made once. The medical examination was complete by 01:43 hours. Every bruise photographed, every DNA sample collected, every violation documented for federal prosecutors. Sarah had endured the clinical cataloging of her assault with the same tactical focus she'd maintained throughout the operation. The urine-soaked clothing was bagged as evidence. Samples collected from where Vega and his accomplices had grabbed her. Every detail meticulously documented because defense attorneys would attack every inconsistency, every gap in the chain of evidence. By the time Sarah emerged from the base medical facility, clean and dressed in her service dress blues, the uniform with ribbons and trident that announced she was a SEAL operator, not a victim, it was 02:18 hours. Agent Chen waited outside with news that would reshape the entire investigation. The base commander wants to see you. Captain Robert Morrison, no relation to the arrested petty officer. He just found out his executive officer, his nephew by marriage, and 12 other personnel were arrested on his watch. He's either going to try covering his ass or genuinely cooperating. We need to know which. What about Martinez? Sarah asked, the question she'd been holding since reading the message. Is he alive? Critical but stable. Chen's expression was grim. Heart attack. Severe but not fatal. He's sedated at Reno Medical Center. Won't be able to communicate for at least 48 hours. Which leaves us with Walsh as operational commander, and I don't trust him. Why not? Instinct. 20 years as an investigator teaches you to recognize when something's wrong. Walsh assumed command too quickly, asked too many questions about evidence location, seemed more concerned with chain of custody than victim welfare. Plus the timing of Hayes trying to delete her server exactly 30 minutes before our raid. Someone with access to operational details tipped her off. Walsh had that access. Can you prove it? Not yet, but I've got our tech team tracking all communications from NCIS headquarters in the last 72 hours. If Walsh or anyone else sent warnings, we'll find the digital trail. They walked to the base commander's office through pre-dawn darkness. The base was awakening to chaos. Word of the arrest had spread. Personnel emerging from barracks, conversations in hushed tones, the kind of institutional shock that came when trusted leaders were revealed as criminals. Captain Morrison waited in his office, a man who'd aged 10 years in 4 hours. His face was haggard, eyes red from lack of sleep, or tears, or both. He stood when Sarah and Chen entered, but his military bearing was diminished, shoulders slumped under the weight of command failure. Lieutenant Mitchell, his voice was rough. I've been briefed on your operation. I want you to know I had no idea this was happening on my base. No idea at all. With respect, sir, Sarah kept her voice level, professional. You signed off on the... I trusted her judgment. She dismissed them. Chen's voice was sharp. She protected the perpetrators. She enabled systematic abuse for 3 years. And you never questioned why 17 different women filed complaints and all 17 got transferred within weeks? I trusted my XO's judgment. Morrison's hands shook. I had no reason to believe she was compromising investigations. Her record was spotless. Her nephew's record was spotless. Everything looked clean on paper. That's the problem, sir. Sarah leaned forward. Predators like Vega operate by making everything look clean. They target victims who won't be believed. They commit crimes in spaces without oversight. They recruit accomplices in positions of authority. The system protects them because people like you trust paperwork more than patterns. Morrison's jaw clenched. I served this country for 26 years. I've commanded 3 different installations. I've never had an incident like this before. You're accusing me of negligence, of complicity, and I'm telling you, I didn't know. Not knowing is negligence when 17 women report the same pattern, and you never investigate beyond what your compromised XO tells you. Sarah's voice was cold. Whether you were actively complicit or willfully blind doesn't matter. 17 women suffered on your watch. That's command failure either way. Chen intervened before Morrison could respond. Captain, we've subpoenaed your emails. Every communication you had with Commander Hayes about these incidents. If we find you knew more than you're claiming, you'll join her in federal prison. If you were genuinely deceived, cooperation now might mitigate consequences. Your choice. Morrison was silent for a long moment, then reached for his desk phone. I want to cooperate fully. I'll provide any records you need. I'll testify if necessary, whatever it takes to make this right. You can't make it right, Sarah stood, but you can avoid making it worse. Don't obstruct. Don't protect anyone. Walsh just ordered all evidence from your operation transferred to NCIS headquarters for processing. Chen looked skeptical. She's represented by counsel. Sarah explained the situation with Walsh, the suspicious calls, the evidence transfer order, the timing of Hayes' deletion attempt. Santos's expression hardened. If Walsh is compromised, he could sabotage the entire case. We need Hayes' testimony about who warned her, and we need it before Walsh has opportunity to interfere further. Can you offer her a deal? Depends what she's offering. If she gives us Walsh, if she testifies about institutional conspiracy, I can recommend reduced sentence, maybe 8 years instead of 12. But she has to give us everything: names, dates, communications, evidence of how deep this corruption goes. Let me talk to her. Her attorney won't allow it without a formal proffer agreement. Then draft the agreement. Sarah's voice was urgent. Every hour we delay gives Walsh time to destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses, build his defense. We need to move now. Santos made a decision. I'll draft the proffer, but Lieutenant, understand what you're asking. If Hayes agrees to testify, she's going to describe how she protected her nephew and his accomplices for 3 years. She's going to detail every complaint she dismissed, every victim she silenced. That testimony is going to be brutal to hear. I've already heard worse tonight. Just get me in that room. By 0347 hours, the proffer agreement was ready. Commander Patricia Hayes was brought to an interrogation room, her attorney beside her, face showing the same haggard exhaustion as Captain Morrison. She looked smaller without her uniform, diminished by civilian clothes and the weight of impending imprisonment. Her attorney, a civilian lawyer named Robert Kim, reviewed the proffer agreement carefully. My client gets 8 years maximum if she provides substantial cooperation in identifying and prosecuting individuals who obstructed justice in this matter. That's the offer? That's the offer. Santos's voice was firm. Full cooperation, complete testimony, and she serves 8 years. Or she goes to trial, gets convicted on all counts, and serves 12 to 15. Her choice. Hayes looked at Sarah with something between shame and desperation. You're the SEAL operator, the one who infiltrated our base. Yes, ma'am. My nephew, Dean, is he? He's facing 15 to 18 years for assault, conspiracy, obstruction. Hayes's attorney put a hand on her arm, warning against saying too much, but Hayes ignored him. I tried to protect him. I thought I was helping family. I thought the women were exaggerating. I was wrong about everything. Commander, your attorney can explain the specifics of the proffer. Sarah kept her voice neutral. But if you have information about who warned you about our investigation, now is the time to share it. Hayes was quiet for a long moment, then made her decision. It was Marcus Walsh, Deputy Director Walsh at NCIS. He called me 3 times in the last week, said there was an undercover operative at Fallon, said I should be careful about what got reported through official channels. Didn't tell me specifically it was you, but he warned me that NCIS was investigating the recreation building events. How do you know Walsh? He's my sister's husband, my brother-in-law, and he's also Marcus Vega's older brother. They have different last names because Vega took their stepfather's name when he was adopted at age 12. But they're blood brothers. And Walsh has been protecting Vega for 6 years across 3 different bases. The room went silent. Sarah felt pieces clicking into place. Walsh wasn't just compromised by family connection to Hayes. He was directly protecting his own brother, using his position at NCIS to enable systematic abuse, to warn predators when investigations got too close, to destroy evidence that threatened his family. Can you prove this? Santos leaned forward. I have saved voicemails from 2 of Walsh's calls. Hayes's voice was quiet. I kept them because I thought they might be useful someday if things went wrong. They're on my personal phone, which your agents confiscated. Passcode is 4927. The messages are in a folder labeled Family. Chen was already pulling up Hayes's phone records on her tablet. Got it. 2 voicemails from a number registered to Marcus Walsh, personal cell. Duration, 3 minutes 47 seconds and 2 minutes 12 seconds. She looked at Santos. This is probable cause for Walsh's arrest. More than that. Santos's smile was sharp. This is conspiracy to obstruct justice, abuse of authority, using official position to enable criminal activity. Walsh is going to federal prison for 20 years minimum. Hayes's attorney spoke up. For the record, my client is providing this information pursuant to the proffer agreement. She expects sentencing consideration in exchange for this cooperation. She'll get it. Santos was already making calls. But right now we need to move fast. If Walsh realizes we're onto him, he'll destroy evidence and disappear. We need to arrest him before he knows Hayes has flipped. The operation moved with military precision. While Santos contacted FBI headquarters to coordinate Walsh's arrest, Chen assembled the evidence package. Phone records showing calls between Walsh and Hayes, voicemails where Walsh explicitly warned about NCIS investigation, email metadata showing Hayes' attempted deletion of her server 37 minutes after Walsh's last call, a family tree documenting the relationship between Walsh and Vega. By 05:12 hours, Santos had coordinated with FBI headquarters. Walsh's arrest was scheduled for 0600 hours Eastern Time, allowing tactical teams to stage properly. The time difference worked in their favor. It was still dark on the East Coast, optimal for tactical entry. At 0903 hours Pacific, 1203 hours Eastern, the call came through. FBI team leader to NCIS command. Subject Walsh detained at 0600 Eastern. He attempted to destroy a laptop when we entered. Device recovered intact. Preliminary examination shows recently deleted files related to NAS Fallon investigation, including operational details about Lieutenant Mitchell's undercover assignment. That's it. Chen's voice carried grim satisfaction. That's proof Walsh was actively compromising the investigation. He's done. But Sarah was thinking 3 steps ahead. Walsh had operational details about her assignment. That meant he knew she was a SEAL, knew she was undercover, knew the mission parameters. And if he'd shared that information with Vega before the arrests? Did Walsh warn Vega directly? Sarah asked. Before Friday night, did he tell his brother that I was NCIS? Chen checked her files. No direct communication between Walsh and Vega in the last 2 weeks. Walsh was careful. He warned Hayes, expecting her to handle it quietly by transferring you or creating administrative obstacles. He didn't expect you to actually attend the event and gather evidence. That's why he panicked when arrests happened, why he tried to assume command and transfer evidence. So Vega didn't know I was undercover when he assaulted me? No. As far as Vega knew, you were exactly what you appeared to be. A junior officer who made the mistake of attending his event. Chen paused. Does that matter? It matters for his defense. Sarah's tactical mind was analyzing legal angles. If Vega had known I was NCIS, defense attorneys could argue entrapment, that he modified his behavior because he knew he was being watched. But he didn't know. He assaulted me thinking I was just another victim. That makes the evidence even more damning. The arrest continued throughout the morning. Walsh in Maryland, Hayes' attorney negotiating her formal cooperation agreement, Captain Morrison placed on administrative leave pending investigation. 12 NCIS agents assigned to review every sexual assault complaint filed at military installations over the past 5 years, looking for patterns Walsh might have suppressed. By 0800 hours, Sarah was running on adrenaline and coffee, her body protesting the 29 hours of continuous operations. Chen ordered her to get 6 hours of rest, but Sarah refused until Martinez's condition stabilized. The call came at 0847 hours. Martinez had regained consciousness at Reno Medical Center. He was weak but lucid, demanding to speak with Sarah immediately. Chen arranged secure video connection, and Martinez's face appeared on the screen, pale and exhausted but alive. Lieutenant, his voice was rough but firm. Mission status? Complete, sir. 6 arrests at Fallon. Walsh arrested in Maryland. Hayes cooperating. Evidence secured. Comprehensive documentation of systematic abuse spanning 6 years. Martinez closed his eyes briefly, something like relief crossing his face. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, sir. Your planning made it possible. My planning almost got you killed. Martinez's expression darkened. I had the heart attack at 2319 hours, right when your biometric data spiked, right when they were assaulting you. I was watching your vital signs, knowing what you were enduring, and my body gave out. Some support I provided. You gave me the mission that's going to change military justice for decades. Sarah's voice was gentle. That's more than support. That's legacy. Legacy doesn't help when you're on the ground being assaulted by predators, but it helps the 17 women who finally got justice, and the hundreds who won't be victimized because we expose this network. Sarah leaned closer to the camera. Sir, you taught me that accepting personal harm to achieve strategic objectives is what separates operators from everyone else. That's exactly what happened. The cost was real, but the outcome justifies it. Martinez was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. Spoken like a true SEAL. Your father would be proud of you, Sarah, and so am I. The trial preparation began immediately. Santos assembled her team, reviewed evidence, identified witnesses, built the case with the kind of meticulous attention that left no room for defense attacks. Sarah provided detailed testimony about the undercover operation, walked prosecutors through every decision point, justified every tactical choice. 3 weeks after the arrests, the preliminary hearing began. This was where defense attorneys would attempt to suppress evidence, argue entrapment, challenge the legality of Sarah's undercover operation. Judge Margaret Sullivan presided, 61 years old, appointed by a conservative president, known for strict interpretation of constitutional rights, including those of criminal defendants. Defense attorney Daniel Carrington stood to argue his motion to suppress. Your Honor, my client Marcus Vega was entrapped by a SEAL operator who deliberately provoked him into actions he wouldn't otherwise have committed. Lieutenant Mitchell attended a private social gathering, wore civilian clothes suggesting she was off duty, accepted alcohol, participated in games, and by her own admission allowed the situation to escalate for hours before calling for backup. That's not law enforcement, that's entrapment. Santos countered immediately. Your Honor, entrapment requires inducement of crimes the defendant wasn't predisposed to commit. Evidence shows Vega committed identical crimes 17 times over 3 years. Lieutenant Mitchell didn't create the pattern, she documented it. The hearing lasted 6 hours. Carrington attacked Sarah's credibility, questioned whether a trained SEAL could legitimately claim victimhood, suggested the entire operation was illegal surveillance. Santos presented the pattern of prior complaints, Hayes' testimony about institutional conspiracy, Walsh's attempts to obstruct justice, and then Sullivan dropped her ruling. The court has reviewed all testimony and evidence. Lieutenant Mitchell's undercover operation was properly authorized under Title 10, United States Code. The defense's entrapment argument fails because evidence shows defendants were predisposed to commit these crimes. The recording was legal. The evidence is admissible. Motion to suppress is denied. But Sullivan wasn't finished. However, the court is deeply troubled by the systemic corruption revealed during this hearing. Not just at NAS Fallon, but within NCIS itself. Therefore, I'm ordering a comprehensive review of all sexual assault complaints filed at military installations in the last 5 years. Every dismissed complaint, every transferred victim, every pattern that was ignored. We're going to find every case like this and reopen them. She looked directly at Sarah. Lieutenant Mitchell, your sacrifice exposed more than one predatory network. You've exposed a systemic failure of military justice. The court thanks you for your service and your courage. The trial itself began 4 weeks later. Santos built her case with devastating precision. Day 1 opened with Sarah's video evidence, the courtroom watching in silence as Vega forced alcohol, Morrison blocked exits, Hayes hit Martinez, and finally the assault itself. 2 jurors cried. All 12 looked at the defendants with undisguised disgust. The victim testimony followed. 17 women, one after another, describing identical patterns. Martinez testified about her assault 9 months prior. Cooper testified about feeling coerced into attendance. Each woman's story corroborated the others, building a cumulative weight that defense attorneys couldn't overcome. When Vega took the stand in his own defense, Santos destroyed him. She pulled up his text message to Morrison. Got fresh meat coming Friday, Mitchell. She'll break easy, just like the others. Does that sound consensual, Staff Sergeant? Vega's face went pale. That was just locker room talk. You didn't mean what? That you targeted Lieutenant Mitchell specifically? That you planned to break her? That you'd done this to others before? Santos's voice was ice. You confessed on camera that you'd been doing this for 6 years across 3 bases. Were all those victims just regretting consensual choices? Vega had no answer that didn't incriminate him further. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all 18 counts. Morrison, guilty on all counts. Hayes, guilty on all counts. Every defendant convicted on every charge. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Sullivan allowed victim impact statements first. Martinez spoke about trauma and recovery. Cooper spoke about finding courage through Sarah's example. 17 women testified about the damage these predators had caused and the justice that finally arrived. Then Sullivan addressed the defendants. Staff Sergeant Marcus Vega, you operated a predatory network for 6 years. You assaulted at least 17 women. You recruited accomplices, intimidated victims, corrupted the system. I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison, dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all benefits, and lifetime registration as a sex offender. Morrison received 18 years. Hayes received 15 years. All 3 dishonorably discharged, all benefits forfeited. Commander Patricia Hayes appeared for her sentencing separately, her cooperation agreement already in place. But Sullivan was harsh despite the deal. You received 17 formal complaints and dismissed everyone. You transferred victims to silence them. You protected predators because one was your nephew. I sentence you to 8 years as agreed, but understand that your betrayal of your oath is unforgivable. Captain Morrison received 6 years for criminal negligence. And finally, Deputy Director Marcus Walsh was sentenced in a separate federal proceeding. 20 years for obstruction of justice, abuse of authority, conspiracy. 6 people, 98 years of combined prison sentences, 6 careers destroyed, 6 predators permanently removed from positions where they could hurt anyone else. The reforms came swiftly. Sullivan's order triggered investigations at 17 military installations. 147 previously dismissed cases were reopened. 32 additional predators were identified and prosecuted. 14 commanding officers faced charges for enabling abuse. Congress held hearings on military sexual assault reform. Sarah testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee, her case becoming the catalyst for the Military Justice Improvement and Increased Prevention Act. New protocols required independent civilian oversight of all sexual assault investigations. Victims received automatic access to legal counsel. Retaliation against complainants became a felony with mandatory minimum sentences. The cultural shift was slower but visible. Reporting rates increased. Prosecution rates improved. Victims found their voices because Sarah had proven that speaking up, when armed with evidence, could destroy even the most protected predators. 5 years after the Fallon operation, Sarah stood before a new class of SEAL candidates during their final week of training. She wore the uniform of a lieutenant commander now, promoted twice for exceptional service, assigned to oversee tactical training and victim advocacy programs. You're about to earn the trident, she told them. You're about to join the most elite special operations community in the world. But the hardest enemies you'll face won't always wear foreign uniforms. Sometimes they'll wear the same uniform you do. She pulled up images from her Fallon operation on the screen. 5 years ago, I went undercover to expose a predatory network. I gathered evidence by allowing myself to be assaulted. That operation resulted in 6 people imprisoned for 98 years, 17 victims receiving justice, and comprehensive reforms across the entire military. The candidates listened in complete silence. I tell you this not to glorify what I did, but to make you understand that being a SEAL means more than physical courage. It means moral courage. It means protecting your teammates from external enemies and internal predators. It means never tolerating abuse, never dismissing complaints, never prioritizing unit cohesion over individual protection. After the address, a young female candidate approached. "Ma'am, would you do it again? Endure assault to gather evidence?" Sarah considered the question carefully. If it was the only way to stop predators and achieve systemic change, yes. But I hope it's never the only way again. The reforms we implemented mean victims have options now. You shouldn't have to endure what I endured to get justice. That's the whole point of what I did. That evening, Sarah visited Martinez at his home in San Diego. He'd retired after his heart attack, taken a position as senior consultant for NCIS victim advocacy programs. They sat on his deck overlooking the ocean, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red. "I got a call from Corporal Martinez today," Sarah said. "She's engaged, getting married next year. Says she's finally moved past the trauma." "That's good," Martinez smiled. "Recovery is possible when justice is served." And Captain Morrison served 4 years, paroled for good behavior. Working as a civilian consultant now, teaching command responsibility at leadership academies. He'll never command again, but he's trying to prevent other officers from making his mistakes. And the women? The 17 victims? Most are thriving. 3 stayed in the military and made rank. 2 transitioned to civilian law enforcement. Several work in victim advocacy. They're not defined by what happened to them. They're defined by how they survived it and what they built afterward. Sarah watched the sun sink toward the horizon. And Walsh? Still in federal prison. Won't be eligible for parole for another 15 years. His brother Vega won't see freedom until he's 61 years old. By then, 3 decades will have passed, and the military they knew will have transformed. Martinez turned to look at her directly. "And you? How are you really doing?" Not the official answer you give reporters, but the truth. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I still have nightmares sometimes. Still feel Morrison's hands on my shoulders when I close my eyes. Still smell the urine occasionally, even though it's been 5 years. Therapy helps. Work helps. Knowing the mission achieved its objectives helps. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't leave scars. Scars prove you survived something that should have destroyed you." Martinez's voice was gentle. "They're not weakness, they're evidence of strength. That's what my therapist says." "Your therapist is right." Martinez stood, extended his hand. "Thank you, Sarah, for having the courage I asked for enduring what I couldn't protect you from, for completing a mission that changed everything." Sarah shook his hand, felt the same strength she'd felt 5 years ago in that NCIS conference room when he'd first briefed her on the operation. "Thank you for trusting me with it, sir, for believing I could handle it, for supporting me when it got brutal." "I always knew you could handle it." Martinez's eyes were wet. "Your father told me once that you were the toughest person he'd ever met, said you had his stubbornness and your mother's heart." He was right. As Sarah drove back to her apartment that night, she thought about her father, about the funeral where Vega had spoken about honor and brotherhood, about how 15 years later she'd exposed Vega as a predator who understood neither concept, about how justice, when pursued with absolute determination, could overcome even the deepest corruption. Her phone buzzed with a message from Corporal Martinez. "Heard you spoke to my SEAL class today. They're calling you a legend. You've inspired an entire generation to believe moral courage matters as much as physical courage. Thank you for that." Sarah replied simply, "We all played a part. You found courage to stand up when it mattered most. That inspired me to finish the mission. We saved each other." The last message came from Santos, now a federal judge after her successful prosecution of the Fallon case. Presiding over a sexual assault court-martial today, the victim cited your case as the reason she felt safe reporting. The defendant pleaded guilty when shown the evidence against him. Your legacy keeps growing. Sarah set her phone down and looked at herself in the rearview mirror. 28 years old when she'd walked into that recreation building. 33 now, with 5 years of healing and growth and continued service. The woman in the mirror had scars, visible and invisible, but she also had purpose, had legacy, had proof that one person's sacrifice could reform institutions and protect thousands of others. They'd thought she was just another victim when they pissed on her. They learned too late she was a Navy SEAL on a mission. And Navy SEALs always complete the mission, even when completion requires becoming the sacrifice that exposes the truth. Even when the enemy wears the same uniform. Even when victory requires enduring hell to deliver justice. Because that's what warriors do. They protect others at personal cost. They fight battles others won't fight. They stand in the gap between predators and victims and refuse to move until justice is served. Sarah Mitchell had stood in that gap, had endured unimaginable violation to gather irrefutable evidence, had transformed personal trauma into systemic change that protected thousands of service members she'd never meet. That wasn't just tactical success, that was legacy. And as she finally allowed herself to fully process the emotional impact of everything that had happened 5 years ago, Sarah understood that healing didn't require forgetting. It required integrating the trauma into her identity without letting it define her completely. She was a SEAL who'd been assaulted. Both were true, both mattered, and both shaped how she protected others for the rest of her career. The mission had been completed, justice had been served, and the war against predators who wore uniforms and abused authority would continue with new warriors inspired by her example. Sarah smiled, started her car, and drove home through the San Diego night. Tomorrow she'd train new SEALs. Next week she'd testify before another military reform committee. Next month she'd speak at a victim advocacy conference. The work continued, the mission evolved, but the core principle remained unchanged. Silence protects predators. Speaking up backed by evidence and courage, and absolute refusal to accept injustice, changes everything. And that revolution, started by one SEAL operator willing to sacrifice everything, would echo through military institutions for generations to come. The last mission was complete, but the legacy was just beginning.